Hello and welcome back to my channel today. So as you've seen via the thumbnail, slings, how I keep mine, and what I've learned is I like watching other YouTubers and seeing how they do it, and that's the best way you get some info on how to keep them and some inside tips. So I've got two that I'm going to show you today, two different ones, and one technically is a juvenile, which is in this one, which is omothymus violaceopes, a Singapore blue. But I'm just going to show you what I do different. And in this one is a Brachypelma Emilia, the Mexican Redleg. So we're going to show you what I did with that and then move that over to something else. But with that, you've got the Brachypelma Emilia, where you would think it's a dry tarantula coming from like Central America and Mexico, and it's on like scrublands like savannas and stuff like that. But they do actually require some humidity, and I'll go through that in a second when I show you. And then you've got the other side where you've got an arboreal, and why I put them in a bigger enclosure, so I'll go through when I get into them. But I think first I'll show you the Singapore blue, and then we'll get that rehoused into this one here. I've just had this with some silicone put on the back, which I did ages ago. I just don't take it off, it's absolutely fine. It's got dirt on it. But I'm going to put this one for my Singapore. It's now a juvie, so we'll put it in there. So let's get straight on and show you what she's done inside here. So when I get the slings, they come in obviously stuff like this from any of your spider providers, and you can house them in there. And I think I had her from, I think this one's a female, it's not fully confirmed, but I've had a couple of these now, and I've noticed the males grow out quite quick. Once they get past an inch, their legs just get super long. This one stayed shorter because I've got another female. With these, you can get say 7 or 8 of them, and you're probably only going to get one female. Their male ratio to females of this is just ridiculous. So hoping I've got another female here, which would be brilliant. But when they come slings, you could put them in here, but then you could keep the water in here because they need more humidity. But unless you drill holes here, I find if you drill the holes on the top, it's okay, but they need a more humidity and it's the airflow. So I don't like using these. So what I do is I go for something like this first off, just so I can control the humidity all around the side and on the top. But with the Singapore blue, what I did is I put them in here because I've got air holes going all the way right down to the bottom, but they move the substrate right up and in to the webbing all the way through, and they eventually web the whole enclosure. And with these, they're quite a good arboreal species to have for a very large tarantula. I think these can get 9 inches plus, like, which is absolutely massive. But the way these web, they're very skittish, but they stay on the web. I can literally just take the lid off even when she's up at the top, and she will just stay there. But if you can see what I mean, there's a part of a molt and a dead roach, and I've got no mould in there, and I think I put a little bit of sand in with this one as well. But what I do is I let it dry out now because she's got to a decent size. I don't need to keep it as humid as what I normally did. And I think she is in there. I think there we go. And at the moment, when they get to this juvie size, don't know if you can make that out, they're very tan coloured at the minute, but we'll get her out and have a look. Yeah, she's in there. I think she's potentially 2 inches, which is a good time to move her over. Because obviously what they'll do then is they'll bring more soil all the way up through the top. But all I normally do is pick a corner that she's not in and just put some water down so it goes all the way down and then soaks out through the bottom. And then I just lightly mist once a week, sometimes twice, depending on how hot it is here in the spider room. So it all depends as well how you keep them with the temperature, because with this, for instance, it can be 22 to 26, 27 degrees they'd be happy with. They feed more the hotter the temperature, but then the water evaporates. And I find if you keep them too warm for a sling and it's too humid, it's not cooking, it's almost like steaming your tarantula, which sounds stupid, but that's where you get more of them struggle. So I try and keep my slings, even this spider, sorry, it says it can handle up to 26 plus. That's okay once it's established. When it's smaller, I do not put it in that sort of temperature. I'll keep it around 20 22, no more than that, because that is fine for it, and then I can manage the water a bit easier. As soon as you got past that dreaded stage of like a good few centimetres, then you can start increasing it. Now it's absolutely fine to be at that sort of temperature because it holds enough moisture in its body and it is doing well. So cross ventilation is the key, I find, for most of my spiders. Cross ventilation and moisture, because if you imagine you've got all of this with no ventilation around the side, then you put in moisture and you've only got the top, it goes very stale very, very quickly, and it starts to smell. And I've had no mould in some enclosures, but when I started out with certain other species like versicolors, they were then dying off, and it was because they didn't have the airflow. So always give them the airflow, which is my main key point for these. So let's get this one set up and let's get her out and get her popped in. Nice bit of cork bark there. I think that's going to be perfect with a little connected tunnel. This was blocked off inside, so I just drilled it through. So let's get some substrate in. But first, this one, I'm going to put some gravel in the bottom. So quick gravel layer in the bottom. This just gives you an extra cheat. You can put a little bit of excess moisture that goes down through the substrate into it. But I do a mesh barrier, but what I use is like a wire plastic. So it's plastic with wire running through it. And this is just better than the spiders can't seem to bite through it, but they can move it around. But it just stops the substrate going through and then soaking up the moisture and then getting too mouldy in the bottom. So let's speed this up because you don't need to see me go through the whole process. You all know how it works now. So I'm putting all these pieces down at the bottom to give the divide. Doesn't need to be perfect. And then we're going to follow through with a good substrate mix. And then put the cork bark piece in, and then I'm picking out good moss pieces that I keep in that little bucket. And I keep the water in there of all the little beasties, and I leave it in the window so it gets sunlight, which helps keep it green. Then I just tidy it up and do the last finishing touches. Don't forget to put the water dish in there as well. Now let's get back to the video and slow it down. So there we have it. So we have the gravel layer, the mesh substrate, which I've given a good soak in, and I've done it right up to the back elevated, loads of moss all the way around, and literally just give it, like I said, a good soak in, just so when you transfer them, they always get stressed. So if they've got the humidity there, it just gives them something less to worry about, and they get acclimatized a lot more quicker. And this lovely piece of cork bark tube, which goes all the way down and through. And I'm hoping this time it will not web all the way out and around. When I've moved my other Singapore blues over to a larger piece of cork bark, when they get to juvies, they normally web inside and then come out and just walk around, which is what I want to do, so I can see them. Because as slings, you want to give them less area, and I find that they then grow quicker, get established quicker. But if you've seen any of my videos, I like to do larger areas so they have more room. But it's the way you design the enclosure inside. So if you give them an area they can feel safe, but there's a lot of area around it, then I can see it and experience the spider that way and still keep an eye on it. Otherwise they just dig down, go in the soil, and some of these arboreals you don't see until they get decent size. So this one I always see every day, traverse all the way around, sit at the top to the point I can take the lid off and she'll stay there if I know she's hungry. If she runs down, then I know she's not hungry. She doesn't want to be disturbed. So it's quite easy. But like I said, when they get to this size, then I was going to do the watering today to maintain this one, but I thought I'd rehouse them over into there. But that's all I do now is soak half of it and then spray the web in, and that was it done. But it is important to make sure they have humidity when they're a lot younger, but the crucial point is cross ventilation. I think that takes out a load of moisture dependent species, especially some of the arboreals, straight away if they haven't got the cross ventilation, because they hunker down and stay in a little burrow, so if they don't feel entirely secure. So hopefully that gives you all a little tip on how I do it. And now this is the juvie stage, so let's see if we can get this one out smoothly. Here we go. I can see an abdomen, nice chunky abdomen down there.
Okay, just quickly trying to find out where the tarantula is, just isolate it because it's in the centre. It's brought all the substrate into the middle, so I'm just trying to get it out without puncturing it or hurting it, and there we go, we've got it out. So let's get back to the video.
So I've managed to get her out. She's a good size, she's ready to be moved over. You can see she's a good size abdomen there. And I'm not sure if the blue's coming through. I do think this one is a female. I've got a molt in there, I might be able to check. But just hunkered down in there. They are quite skittish, they don't like the light. But also, one of the specimens I had of these was extremely bold. So let's see if I can get this in without it running up my hand. See if we can give this one a little tickle to come out and down. I'll use the paintbrush on this one. I find that sometimes you can use a stick, a straw, a paintbrush, all depends on the type of tarantula. Ones with super hairy legs, I don't use the paintbrush because it sticks to the legs and then stresses them out, and you can even pull off a leg. But this one, I'll use a little paintbrush, and I'm going to just try and see if I can push her here, but I think she'll turn around because she's quite bold. But I'm hoping she'll come out slowly, and then we can get a good look at her as she comes down. Here we go. See, it does almost at the minute look like an M. balfouri, but it isn't. It is a stunner. And like I said, very bold at the minute. No threats, just wants to be covered up, hide out the way. Yeah, this one I think is definitely a female. But they can jump, I've had these jump, and they can explode with speed. She just wants to hide. There we go. Look at that, that is absolutely stunning. Where are you going? That's it, down and under. See if we can encourage her back. Come on, one way. That's it. Oh, there we go. You can see that coloration underneath there slightly. But I think she'll find it nice and safe inside there. Do you see what I mean by the M. balfouri? It just looks like it at the minute. She's just trying to run away from the light. But there we go, we'll let her settle. She will find the court park. Right, so she's just exploring around. She'll find that and she'll go straight down in there, but she looks absolutely stunning at the minute in there. Beautiful. Right, so the next one, the Brachypelma Emilia, I'm going to rehouse into here, so I'll show you what I'm going to do there in a second. But let me show you this one. This one, he or she, has just been digging out completely all around it and has actually took an absolute age to get to this size. Started to get the gorgeous Emilia colours of the Mexican Redleg. They are absolutely stunning. But as you can see, this is dry, but I water this one all the time, and I normally just do one opposite end and then let that dry out the next time I do the other end. But I did keep a ink pot in there as a water dish, and I'm not sure if she went to it or drank, but she never filled it up or anything for the first instance. But now she's getting slightly bigger, she's actually filling it up and she doesn't need it. But it actually says that they can have 65% to 80% humidity in some of the scrublands where they come from. So they do traverse over moss and things like that to get humidity. And the thing with this is people think, oh, you don't need any moisture with these slings, leave them too dry when they're younger, and that's why they perish. They do need a bit of moisture, so I did keep this on moist substrate because it was 1 centimetre, I think 0.5 to 1, so I kept it moist literally permanently. I never let it dry out just in case it had a quicker molt and then had issues in the molt. So I kept the substrate like this at all times, and the bigger they get, then you can start leaving it more dry, but I like to give them the option. So that's why I'm going to do one like this with a hide, and I'm going to put a bit of moss in. So let me just get this one sorted and we'll come back. So for this one, that's what I've done. One of those little hides you get off the spider shop. They've got tons of these. I absolutely love them when a spider uses it and then just sits out here on the open. And then I've just left a little soil area with an ink pot full of water hot glued in. Tiny little plant, because if I don't put them in for this species, Lucy always tells me off because she likes to have them nice and pretty for these Brachypelma Emilia. She loves them, one of her favourites. And I've just done moss, carpet moss, all the way around the top, and I've just moistened it as such because this one is brilliant at holding the moisture. And I'm just interested to see if it will sit there permanently all the time, or it will use this or go in the hide. So I think this looks rather nice for a Brachypelma Emilia. So you can see I've got dry substrate at the bottom and then moist substrate at the top. We can just see what it does, and then there's no harm in giving it a little bit of moisture because this will dry out within a good few days in here. I think it's 25 degrees in here at the minute, so that won't take long to dry out, but this will stay moist a lot longer. So I think this should be an easy rehouse from there to there. Might give a food response. No, perfect. Come on then. Absolutely love these. I think these are my favourite Brachypelma. But it took an age to get to this size. Come on. Got a nice new home there. There we go. There we go. Look, perfect. That's what I wanted to see, but I want to see if she'll do that and settle and go in that hide and just sit on the front of it. But there we go. So that's going to be it with the moisture in there. So I'd say that's quite a lot of moisture for a Brachypelma Emilia. That's probably only even at about 50-55% humidity in there, but maybe 60. But I'll see how she goes, and then I'll just fluctuate it around there, let it dry out for a little bit. But it's always good to give them a bit of humidity, a bit of moisture, because especially when you've got an abdomen that big and then you're going into a molt. But you can see the condition of that tarantula is just spot on. It's perfect. That is stunning. So there we have it. So it's walking around at the top at the minute. And I think this one, she's gone in and gone down in the cork box straight away. So she's going to settle in there. But that's what I'll do. So I'll keep the humidity up on that one slightly now for the next couple of weeks, just to get her to settle. As soon as I start seeing her lay web around, then I'll back off the humidity in the soil and mist onto the actual web itself, and then leave the water dish to top it up. Oh no, there she is, she's out on the top. And then this one, I'll just see how it goes, see how she feeds, and then I may just let it dry out. But the moss, this type of moss that I get, stays green for longer, so it's absolutely brilliant. So I can go without weeks without watering it, and then it will still stay vibrant and nice and colourful. But let's see how she enjoys that. So there we go, how I keep some of the types of slings I've got in Gav's Tarantula Spider Room. Hope you enjoyed that, and I'll see you on the next video.